All right, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I know participants are still entering the Zoom meeting, so I'm giving everyone just another minute to join, and then we'll kick off today's webinar. So just keeping my eye on the participants, and once it kind of slows down, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, everyone, thanks for attending, for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jess Henry, and I am the president this year of the St. Louis Metro section of the APA. I'm very excited about the topic today, which is the St. Louis Affordable Housing Report Card. This is a really exciting thing that was recently kind of put out there. Many of you may have seen the press releases or already be familiar, but we definitely want to bring this topic to as many of our members as we could. This also will count for one equity credit. There is the new equity CM credit. So keep that in mind when you're logging your credit after this. A couple of housekeeping things. Our next webinar will be on April 20th, and the topic will be energy efficient home construction. And also want to share that we are planning a May social event somewhere outdoors, and we'll be sending out more information about that shortly. Our two speakers are Jenny Connelly-Bowen and Cristina Garmendia. Jenny is the Executive Director of the Community Builders Network of Metro St. Louis, which is a coalition of community building organizations from many sectors that believe in strong, inclusive communities. Cristina Garmendia is founder and principal at URBNRX, where she advises governments, foundations, and nonprofits on accountability and the use of data to inform decision-making. Todd says that the audio is echoing. Hopefully that goes away when our speakers start, and I will let them go ahead and get started now.
Hi, everyone. Okay, are you hearing an echo when I speak? It sounds like it's not happening for everybody. I was not hearing an echo either. So hopefully we're okay. Is that better for you, Todd? Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. Todd, hopefully it improves for you. And if not, we can maybe troubleshoot on the back end. But welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here and for having us with you today, for inviting us to join you. We're excited about the conversation that's on tap. So I am, as Jess mentioned, I am Jenny Connelly-Bowen. I currently serve as Executive Director with the Community Builders Network of Metro St. Louis. Christina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, Cristina Garmendia here, principal at URBNRX. We're the firm that was hired to execute on the vision for the report card.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to start us off with a really brief introduction to the report card and how it came to be. And then I'm going to pass it over to Christina, who, as she mentioned, is one of the consultants who led the project. So it would help, I think, if I were to share my screen and my slides. So let me do that. All right, hopefully everyone can see. Just getting my screens configured here. All right, so here we go with the presentation. So what is the St. Louis Affordable Housing Report Card? The St. Louis Affordable Housing Report Card was created as an accessible, easy to use tool for community organizations, housing advocates, regional decision makers, and residents in St. Louis City and County who want to see growth in and more equitable use of affordable housing resources. We know and have known for a long time that we don't have enough affordable housing resources currently available in St. Louis. But in recent years, our region hasn't really had the tools it's needed to accurately grasp the full scope of that need. And this report card was created to change that. We are hoping, and we know that it has already, so we hope it continues to start conversations, gives community leaders like you the tools you need to make your own recommendations, and provides policymakers and elected officials with data that they can use to better understand housing needs and track progress. You may know some reports have been released in the past and in the present and the near future that are focused on St. Louis City and St. Louis County separately, but never united into one report like this, and never as a simple report card. And speaking of simple, another important thing to note, sometimes when data does come out in reports, it can be kind of wonky and inaccessible. So one of the other goals of this report card was to make the data accessible and usable, truly a tool that anyone can leverage. So a few quick, I feel like I'm on NPR, a few quick notes about our sponsors. This report card was made possible thanks to generous support from the Deaconess Foundation, and CBN, Community Builders Network, commissioned the report card on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. And then the report card, as we mentioned before, was put together, was put together by two wonderful consultants, one of whom is on the call with us today, Cristina Garmendia from URBNRX, served as the lead consultant on the project, and Jessica Payne from OCO Design and Engagement, also supported. And so that's them in a beautiful picture. It's really fun. So a few notes about the vision. This report card is modeled after the successful New Orleans housing report card. Housing NOLA is a 10-year partnership between community leaders and the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance. It's a collaborative of home builders and community development organizations advocating for the preservation and production of affordable housing. So we share this, we can't go into much detail about this today, but we share this to convey that this project was very much inspired by best practices coming from another city in the US. So a few notes about that. And then one final note before I pass the floor on to Christina. We want to reserve most of the time today for talking about the report card itself and its specific findings and recommendations. But we would absolutely be remiss if we did not frame the conversation with some notes about why housing is a racial justice issue. I think many of you may know a lot of this already, but just as a reminder to set the stage, race has been a core factor in sculpting both St. Louis's social and physical geography. It has divided and continues to divide Black and white families, both physically and economically. And when we talk about this reality, it's really important to note that this, what you could call the geography of inequity, was created intentionally over many decades by those in power, and then reinforced sometimes unintentionally by systems and infrastructure. And this history has created a reality where today in St. Louis, we have positive outcomes and resources that tend to pool in majority white neighborhoods. And this includes a whole lot of things like wealth and health, longer life expectancy, employment opportunities, political power. I could go on, it's a long list. And to St. Louis, where majority Black neighborhoods, although they are rich in culture and experience, are plagued with a lack of resources and opportunity. Systemic disinvestment has compounded many, many challenges in Black neighborhoods. Again, this is a long list, but just a few to mention. They include substandard housing, vacant properties, illegal dumping, lead pollution, conditions that negatively impact health, lack of amenities, which includes grocery stores, healthcare facilities, green spaces, and all of this further perpetuates intergenerational poverty and poor health. There are some pretty stark and startling facts that highlight housing-related racial disparities throughout the report card brief, which you will see or have probably already seen if you've reviewed that in more detail. But to sum up, we just want to emphasize before we dive deep, while a lack of quality and affordable housing for lower income residents affects people of all races and ethnicities in our region, we cannot discuss this affordable housing report card with you today without acknowledging St. Louis's specific history and context around systemic racism and segregation. And obviously this has really important implications for the solutions we prioritize going forward as well. So important framing. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Hello, everyone. Now, just to lay out a few of the assumptions we made while preparing this presentation for you all, we were told that most of the planners that are part of the St. Louis Metro Division are work for municipalities or working government in some capacity. So we're thinking of that in mind. And Jenny, I can't remember what was the other assumption we wanted to mention right here in our prep for this.
There was another one. I can't access it in this mode, okay, but I will bring it up and we will add an addendum about that. Sorry about that.
Thanks. Okay, moving forward. Next up, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the approach that URBNRX took to this request. You know, we started with the model from New Orleans and basically what we wanted to achieve. And the approach that URBNRX took to the proposal for an affordable housing report card involved, next slide, a data assessment. So one thing you'll see a lot in reports is what data is available. You'll get kind of the picture of, you get a lot of stats, a lot of data. And I think it's important for our approach to this kind of work. Another product that we did was the St. Louis City Equity Indicators, is that you frequently are limited to the data that is available to talk about a topic. And but that the availability of data itself is not a neutral thing that just happens. People don't share data for reasons, or we aren't able to talk about issues because the data isn't available and we haven't made the investments in that kind of accountability infrastructure. So the report card is a data assessment on how we're able to track and measure performance of our region towards achieving affordable housing. And so throughout the report card, we'll be talking about what are the measures that mattered to our coalition of affordable housing advocates. And we're really, the process we took is we identified what the measures we really wanted, which ones would matter, and then backfilled with which ones have data that's available. And so the recommendations throughout the report card are to stakeholders that need to be producing, sharing, or aggregating data that allows us to measure performance in a better way. So that's just a heads up, like that's what this report card, this first version of the report card is doing. So next slide. And another approach that we took to this project was around engaging the coalition, so the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition, in decision-making about the design of the report card. Jessica Payne, who was mentioned before as being part of the team, is both a housing expert in her own right and a designer. And so this project was just as much about the design of the report card as it was about the actual analysis inside of it. The message matters, but so does the messenger. So we really wanted to engage the coalition in the decision-making about every aspect about the report card, including what was important to include. So we knew from talking to our coalition that just putting out a report would not be helpful enough to for people doing advocacy work. That they wanted access to data, that they wanted to be able to have graphics to share, and so all those things that they needed to achieve the goal of successful affordable housing advocacy was built into the design of the final product. Next slide.
And I did find the second assumption, so sorry for the disjointed notes here, but the second assumption was that we will be talking today about affordable housing in a holistic way, not just subsidized housing, but other strategies for creating affordable housing as well.
Right. So, and affordable housing is not just, we're not just talking about subsidized housing, we're talking about non-subsidized, privately owned housing as well. So the timeline for this project, since this is a group of planners, we thought you'd be interested in this part of it, but in June of 2020 was when the Deaconess Foundation awarded a grant to fund this project to CBN. In August, URBNRX was selected as the consultant. We launched the project in September. We spent significant amount of time clarifying those deliverables. So really talking about what do we need to achieve with this report card. We held focus groups with our coalition in January through February of 2021. This is where we showed kind of we'd done our initial research and we were providing an opportunity for the coalition to get feedback and to make recommendations about additional data sources or metrics or partners that should be included in the conversation. And we had 9 of those, about 9 different topics related to affordable housing. Then March through May was really processing their feedback and completing the data analysis. We were throughout the summer writing the brief and the website content. And as a note, the website content is the brief, the PDF version of the report is truly the brief version. I think it's around 30 pages, but it's the brief version of what's on the website. The website is the content in full. And then in September and October, we were reviewing the website and all the maps that we created for this project, and we launched it officially in November.
And I should probably add as a sidebar for those who aren't familiar, a few notes about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. As I mentioned before, we commissioned this report at CBN on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. That is a group that convenes stakeholders from a variety of sectors, including education, development, health, housing, human services, a whole bunch of different folks that all actively support increased funding and a greater role for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in both the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. And that group came together first in 2018 to support fully funding the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which at that point had been funded below the $5 million mandated at a minimum, as a minimum for like at least 5 years. And since then, the coalition's work and advocacy have helped to continue growing the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was funded at $6.5 million for the past several years, even amid the pandemic, and also work to establish an Affordable Housing Trust Fund in St. Louis County. So just some context. And now I really am going to stop talking for a while.
No,
Back to you, Christina.
to chime in, Jenny. All right, next slide. And so, like I said, the coalition, we really wanted to hear what they needed from this report card, and what they asked for was data disaggregated by race, income, tenure, so whether someone's a homeowner or renter, geography, and subsidy program. So we tried to do that throughout the report when it was possible, and when it wasn't, we made recommendations to those stakeholders involved that they should be disaggregating data in that way. All right. Next up, and so to cover some baseline assumptions, one of those is, what do you mean by affordable? And affordability is really something that is dependent upon your income, where you live, and who you live with. HUD supports affordable housing programs for people whose income is below your region's median income. So in St. Louis, our median income defined by HUD is based off of the whole MSA. And the median family income for 2020 was just about $85,000. And you might be thinking that's a lot higher than what the median income is for the city or for the county. And you'd be right. But when there is development that's being built for 80% AMI or MFI, area median income, it's talking about 80% of this standard, based on, depending on your family size. So it's very much, our affordable housing conversation is going to be based on those income levels, and throughout the report card. So looking at the product, and this is what our coalition asked for. If you go back, next slide, we ended up with both a report brief where the major findings were highlighted, as well as the report card. And I think next slide is we're going to be talking about the components. So the components of the report card, first off, we were asked to grade the St. Louis region, the whole point of a report card. And so we gave St. Louis an affordability grade. And really all this does is answer how affordable is the St. Louis region. So what's the primary metric by which we should measure our performance towards achieving affordable housing for all? So we'll talk a little bit more about that in depth. Then there was the demand model. And this was answering a key question for the coalition. We talk about the need for affordable housing a lot, but what they were really looking for was a way to quantify it. Like, how much affordable housing do we need? And so we developed a demand model that allowed us to estimate the demand or the need, the unmet demand for affordable housing in the St. Louis region. And the entire methodology is shared online in the website, so you can replicate it for your own region. Next is the deep dive. What are we doing about it as a region? So there's so many things that we do, related activities that are related to affordable housing, and we've organized them under two themes. Theme one is around preservation, preserving existing affordable housing. And then the second theme is around building new affordable housing. So this is the section where we really go into, well, how would you measure, how can we measure our performance in those areas? If we're looking at affordable housing as kind of a ecosystem of supply, how are we preventing subtraction from our affordable housing base? And what are we doing to add to it? And then the accountability recommendations. As I mentioned before, the recommendations in this report card are focused on accountability. So what is the data we need to truly measure the performance of our efforts to achieve affordable housing? So that's what the focus of the recommendations are in this report card. They're not on policy. We're not necessarily saying we need to be pushing for these types of affordable housing interventions. There's not policy recommendations per se in this version of the report card. That'll be the work of groups like yours and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition. And then what's online and only online are the interactive maps. So we use Tableau, so you can really interact with the data for pretty much every map that was made for this report card and by census tract. And then we also thought it was important to include an update section or a blog where, because there's new information coming out all the time, this report card, by the fact that it's a report, is a snapshot in time. And knowing that we're learning more, there's more resources being added all the time. And there's, of course, many aspects of affordable housing that we couldn't cover in this report. So it was important that we have a place for this information to be shared in the future. All right, next slide. So to go a little bit deeper into the deep dive, what we meant and what we looked at when we were talking about preserving existing affordable housing. First, we're talking about just the simple math of maintaining quantity. Are we really maintaining our existing affordable housing? And how would we measure that? Section 2 in this section is around improving quality. How can we improve the quality of our existing affordable housing? Section 3 is around preventing displacement of people. And then section 4 is around financing repair, home repair, and rehabilitation. In the next section, which is around building new affordable housing, we've split this again up into, I think there's 3 sections. Again, the simple math of how are we increasing quantity and how are we able to measure it? 2, are we supporting mobility? So mobility in terms of people moving from lower income, lower resource areas to higher resource areas of the region. And then 3, supporting financing for new construction home ownership. So we split the financing about rehab and rehabilitation and new construction home ownership into 2 different sections. So next slide, we're going to go a brief visit, if we can, to the website. And Jenny, if you just want to click around, I will narrate. But yes, you can visit us at affordablestl.com. We have a place where you can download the report and see who the sponsors are. If you go to the About section, that'll tell you more about who is involved and the partners. The deep dive is those 7 sections that I just mentioned under each theme. It's where you can see our full readout of how each of those sections, each of those themes should be measured and what data is available relating to that. As well as a link to our accountability metrics. If you go to the Maps tab, you'll see we put all of our maps here, including links to ones if you're looking at it from your phone. But for each of these, you're going to be able to explore the data by, if you hover over any map, Jenny, you'll be able to read the census tract and then any data that we have available. And we have a lot of filters involved. So if you wanted to look at where there's affordable housing at different income levels, then that's something you'll be able to do. And we have, I think, like 7 or 8 maps here in this tab where you can see the data and interact with it. Okay, so I'm trying to think, we should go to the updates tab. Yeah. And so this is our blog, and it's where we're including research, new research that's happening, We had research done on the phenomenon of conversions. One of the questions people had was how many multifamily buildings in St. Louis City are being converted to single family. So how many units are we losing of affordable housing that way? But yeah, so this is where, if there's something you want to write about or something you know about, this is where you're invited to join this project. Okay, so I think that's our brief overview here. And back to our little slide deck. Okay, so for the basics, how are we doing? I think we're starting first with that report card. So how affordable is St. Louis anyway? And for this, we've included not only just the overall every household, how many households have affordable housing in the St. Louis region, which is, it's a function, it's the converse of housing cost burden. So if you know the definition for housing cost burden, it's 30% of your income is being spent on housing costs. And so in the St. Louis region, city and county combined, 29% of households have housing cost burden, which means the inverse, 71% of households have achieved affordable housing. And we have a simple letter grade system applied to that. So 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C, and so on. So what we've done here is disaggregate these households by income level, race, and tenure. And so you can see here that we have, and one of the taglines for this project, it's a tale of two cities, because as you can see, we have, if you're making more than the area median income, for the 96% of households in that income bracket have affordable housing. When you get to around the less than 80% of area median income, it becomes a lot more rare for households to have achieved affordable housing. And you can see in that lowest income bracket, 30% AMI, that only less than 1 in 5 households have affordable housing at that level. So we have grades of Fs for these 3 lower income brackets. If you go to the next slide, we'll show you kind of how that shakes out when you look at disaggregated by race and tenure. Overall, you can see that there's racial inequity here. Black households are much less likely than white households to have affordable housing. And this disparity shrinks, but still continues when you disaggregate by tenure. So renters overall are doing worse than homeowners. Black renters are doing worse than white renters, and Black homeowners are doing worse than white homeowners. So this is our, the ultimate measure of all our efforts around achieving affordable housing should be measured simply by whether households have affordable housing. And some of these, some other basics to know, this is a chart that shows you the distribution of households by the ownership status, the tenure, whether they're a renter or homeowner, and their income bracket. And so a few takeaways from this table that you should know is that, one, we have a lot of financially secure homeowners in our region. So just, around 65%, the majority of homeowners are financially secure. They're at 100% AMI or above. But when you look at renters, less than a quarter of renters are above the area median income. And so while this report card looks at both homeowners and renters, we do spend more time talking about renters in the report. So that's just so you can see there is need for affordable home ownership opportunities as well as rental opportunities at all income levels. There's still significant numbers of homeowners who are in need of affordable housing in those lower income brackets as well. All right, so just to give you again, the whole methodology for the demand model. If you are a real nerd for this kind of information, it's all online. But to give you just a brief overview of what we did with the demand model. So how did we quantify how much affordable housing we needed? The components of the demand model are this. You need to define what affordability is. You have to estimate the supply of affordable housing at each of those income levels. You need to estimate demand for different housing types, and then you can calculate the unmet demand. You go to the next slide. We, again, like we said, we've split this demand model and much of the report. We're reporting a lot of information disaggregated by income. And so who is someone who's making less than 30% AMI? That's someone like a childcare worker is making an income level of $22,000 or less. And 27% of our renters are in this income bracket. And what can they afford based on their income? If you do 30% of that income, it's $560 a month or less. And so, Jenny, I think we had a link for what this, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this table. It's in an expanded form in the report brief, but we thought it was really important to really personify who are in these income brackets. Like, who are we talking about affordable housing for? And so when you're talking about 80% AMI, you're talking about someone who's a paralegal. So we're going to pop this link in the chat. When we were making this table, we looked up the incomes for different occupations for the St. Louis MSA from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we've codified them by the income level, income bracket, and you'll have access to this. So if you need to advocate for affordable housing in your region and you know your audience, you'll be able to pick an occupation that speaks to them. So you might find more empathy for someone who's a social worker or a paralegal or a firefighter. When we're building housing at 80% AMI, we're really building it for construction workers and firefighters, so really depending on your audience is you'll want to choose an occupation that speaks to them and makes them empathetic towards people in those income brackets. Okay, back to the deck. All right. So this is how we calculated what was an affordable rent for each of those income brackets. So around, for that 50 to 80% AMI, it's $1,500 about a month or less, and so on. Okay, next slide. And when we talk about estimating supply, we're looking at, here we pulled out all the rental units available in the city and county. They're just over 200,000. And you can see by the color coding here, it's organized by the affordable rent levels for each income bracket. So that purple is that 0 to 30% AMI. So 500 units that are $550 a month or less. And you can see we have just under 20,000 units in that category. And if you can remember, 27% of our renters are in that income bracket. So St. Louis is interesting. It has very little in that lowest affordability bracket. But when you go up just one bracket, if you're looking at units that are less than $1,000, we have almost 100,000 units just in that $550 to $999 bracket rate. So the supply is really squeezed at the bottom of the income bracket, but it opens up a lot just by going up one income bracket. Okay, next slide. And this is what that means geographically. So we've mapped the supply. The purple again is units where households are paying less than $550 a month in rent. And you can see it's concentrated in little pockets of North County and around downtown. And there's whole sections of the map that are missing. That's because there aren't any units affordable at that level in those areas, which is much of St. Louis County. But as soon as you go up one rental bracket, so that units that are affordable to people making 50% of area median income. You see a lot more happening throughout the region, and you see kind of concentrations in a South City, South County corridors, and in North City, North County. All right, so, and I'm only going to briefly touch on this, but estimating demand, we were looking at household types. So if you have a 2-person household, that could be a married couple, that could be a single parent with a child, that could be 2 roommates. And those types of households have different household needs, different numbers of bedrooms that they need. So basically the model is we're estimating if there's a 2-person household, what's the likelihood that they're going to need a 1-bedroom versus a 2-bedroom. And we did this for every kind of household size. And so this is the outcome. This table is the outcome of those calculations. Our estimate of demand for these different household types by household income. So, and so I'm not going to talk too much more about it, but really when you match up, when you compare supply and demand, this is our big takeaway is that we're missing 35,000 units that are affordable to the lowest income bracket, 30% AMI or less. And most of those are, we're missing 1-bedrooms, 28,000 of them are 1-bedrooms, around 7,000 2-bedrooms, around 2,000 3-bedrooms. And so that's the amount where the unmet demand is. And what that means is that people in that lower income bracket are having to go up a bracket. They're having to pay more than they can afford because there's just a simple lack of supply that's affordable to their income. Okay, so what are we doing about it? The deep dive. I'll be giving you kind of a sampling of what we learned in each of these sections. So for preserving existing affordable housing, what are we doing? What are we doing to maintain quantity? So first off, how many affordable units do we have in the region? And so we're looking for each of these sections. We disaggregated we create the data by whether it's subsidized or non-subsidized. And so here you can see we have less than 38,000 affordable housing units that are subsidized, AKA supported by federal and state subsidies in the city and county. And really it's less because as you can see, the biggest bucket we have here, there's just over 13,000 housing choice vouchers. And then there's just under 13,000 LIHTC units built with low-income housing tax credits. And the fact is, a lot of vouchers are being used in LIHTC developments, but we don't know how many. So, but just with that soft estimate of 38,000 affordable housing units, that means that only 27% of households that earn less than 30% of AMI have access to a federally funded, protected affordable housing unit. So when I've been getting in more of the mindset, when you're thinking about subsidized units, I think of them more as protected because they are limited to people of a certain income. Everything else in the private market, people are having to compete with people of higher incomes for the same unit. Okay. Next slide is about our section on improving quality. Now, this was the section. Quality was something that our coalition really had a drumbeat on as critically important. Problem is, we don't collect data that helps us measure this important topic. And when we talk about measuring housing quality, we're talking mostly about housing conditions. What we are able to measure is a little bit about is accessibility. And what we found, there's nearly 88,000 people in St. Louis that have disabilities, ambulatory disabilities that impact their ability to walk. But there's only 2,000 subsidized affordable housing units that are designed for people with any kind of disability. And we got that number from our partners at the city and county housing authorities. So there's a huge mismatch. And we really estimate that only around 3% of disabled households have access to a protected affordable unit. Next, when we're talking about preventing displacement, We're talking about, so displacement is when people are forced to leave where they live, usually because of rising rents. So we do have, our housing market is rapidly changing in St. Louis. In just the past 5 years, median rents have risen by 11% in the region. And and we know that just over 25,000 households were behind in rent back in 2020. It still continues today. Yes, rental assistance has been slowly meted out, but it's a drop in the bucket. So 25,000 households were behind on rent, and an average rent debt of $2,700 per household. And another thing that we want to talk about is that there were nearly 18,000 evictions in the city and county in 2019 and 2020. We decided to combine those years because 2020, of course, there was eviction moratoriums, and we wanted to provide kind of a better picture of the norm. And as eviction moratoriums have been lifting, the evictions have been ramping up again. And so we're returning to kind of 2019 levels now. I think we have some maps in the next slide. And so here is where evictions are happening. The left shows the whole city and county combined. And so you can see North County is the center of the eviction crisis in St. Louis. And you can see on the scale that there was 1,400 eviction filings in a single zip code in North County between those 2 years. And then on the right, we decided to zoom in on the city so that you could see what was happening at the city, taking out the county, the dire straits of North County residents out of the picture. But here you can see eviction filings in the city are concentrated in downtown and then parts of Dutchtown as well. So next slide, we're talking about last section here is we're talking about financing, repair, and rehabilitation. Here we have just the map showing you where home improvement loans are being approved. We have a huge mismatch between demand and supply for home improvement loans. So not only were Black applicants more than twice as likely to be denied a home improvement loan than white applicants in 2020. Our programs that are designed to help low-income homeowners support home repairs have incredibly long wait lists. The city's Healthy Home Repair Program, for example, has a wait list of over 5 years with over 1,250 applicants. So next, we're going to just briefly touch on the next section, the building new affordable housing opportunities. And I feel like make sure, Jenny, if you can help me monitor time. I'm a little nervous. I've been talking too long. I could talk about this so much. So when we talk about increasing quantity, past 6 years, St. Louis has added nearly 13,000 new housing units, but most of those are non-subsidized and are affordable only to higher income households. At the same time, the number of new housing units that have been built annually has decreased by 40% since 2015. And we've estimated that around 10% of all new housing units were built using an affordable housing subsidy since 2015. One thing we're lacking as a region is a comprehensive database of affordable housing, subsidized affordable housing developments and what subsidies they received or applied for and didn't receive. So this was a little bit of a challenge, just trying to estimate the number of new affordable units that were built at different income levels. And then lastly, in case you didn't know, there have been no new public housing units built in recent years in either the city or the county. And the last time public housing was built in the county was before I was born, so which was in the 1980s. So next up, and just a slide to show, or a chart to show the rate of new housing construction in the region in the past 5 years. That 40% decline, and most of that decline is coming from a decline in multifamily units. And I think this data is based off of building permits collected by HUD. So if you look at where all new housing units are being built, a huge amount are being built in unincorporated St. Louis County. So just over 4,300 units, followed by the city. Clayton is building 10% of all new housing units in the past few years for the region, and so on. So Eureka, Kirkwood, Creve Coeur, hopefully these are places that you guys are working or live. And this is where development is happening. But when you look at multifamily, so multifamily housing is important because it's where we're more likely to be able to have affordable housing policies implemented, where we can ask developers to reserve some units to become protected for different income levels, or have them contribute to an affordable housing trust fund. So here you can see these are the 12 places. There's no other places in the city or county where multifamily housing is being built. The majority of multifamily housing is being, in the past 5 years, has been built in St. Louis City. And that's the majority of the housing that's being built in the city is multifamily. But then again, unincorporated St. Louis County, about a third of their new construction is multifamily. Clayton is, the most of what they're building is multifamily, followed by Richmond Heights, Creve Coeur, Maplewood. And so some places almost drop off the map if you're only looking at multifamily, such as places like Eureka. Okay. Next slide. When we're talking about mobility, what allows us to really study whether people are being able to move to where they want to live, or so you think, is the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The Housing Choice Voucher Program was designed to allow people to move out of public housing and choose where they want to live among the private market. But as you can see from this map, people are not moving very far from where public housing already is. You can see the majority of the county is not, people are not using their housing choice vouchers to live there. Now, why that is, there may not be units that will accept vouchers, or owners, landlords, let's not raise the people involved. But there's something happening here where the Housing Choice Voucher Program in St. Louis is not, it doesn't seem to be representative of where people might want to live. Most of the Housing Choice Vouchers are concentrated in lower income municipalities of North County. And something the county is doing is they have a move to opportunity program where they're trying to increase the number of households that live in census tracts that are considered high opportunity areas, where incomes are higher, where poverty and crime is low, where there's good schools. And only 9% of voucher holders live in those kinds of census tracts. And in fact, there's so many municipalities that do not have any households using vouchers. We wanted to call them out here. And so those largest ones that have no households using housing choice vouchers are Wildwood, Clayton, Town and Country, Ladue, and Brentwood. So it's very interesting. So this is something I'm just fascinated by. It was new information for me to see, and for most of our partners, even our housing authorities hadn't seen the map in this way. All right, next slide. And with 13,000 vouchers, I think we'd be remiss to not mention that there's a huge wait list. There's a huge wait list for vouchers. And when you're to quantify that in terms of the number of applications they receive and the number of vouchers they're able to give out annually, the wait list in the county is 15 years long, and in the city it's 42 years long. So by the time the city actually reaches out to an applicant, they've moved out of the region, or they've moved and you can't reach them, their phone number has changed, or they've died. Like, you can die waiting on this list. So there's incredible demand for housing choice vouchers and not enough supply. And just a quick look at, when you look at all these different households, subsidized housing, and where they're concentrated in the region, we've disaggregated census tracts by either calling them majority Black or majority white based on their population. And there's a few, like a stripped down central St. Louis, where they're diverse. And so there's no majority. But here you can see that housing choice vouchers, 76% of housing choice vouchers are issued in majority Black census tracts. They're in fact the type of subsidized housing that's most likely to be concentrated or located in a majority Black census tract, while Section 8 developments are the most intentionally located in majority white census tracts. So 47% of those units are majority white census tracts. So it's very interesting to see where our subsidized housing is. And that should, I hope that informs, our, some goals are to disperse subsidized housing throughout the region. And this is where it is currently. All right, next slide. And then the last section we wanted to track information about is financing new construction homeownership. So to put in the picture here, for new construction, there was only $34 million of subsidies available for construction or major rehabilitation of affordable housing projects in the city and county in 2020. And in fact, there's again a demand supply mismatch here. There's a lot more interest in building affordable housing than there is supply in terms of financing. 37% of applications for affordable housing project financing were approved. So the majority were denied for state and federal tax credits in 2020. So this is a number we're going to be monitoring for in future report cards. When we talk about home ownership, there's an incredible amount of capital here. Almost $5 billion in 2020 alone was available and was deployed in St. Louis for home mortgages. And just under 20,000 mortgages were originated, and the majority of those were to white applicants. So again, this is data we can disaggregate by race and by place. So we found that Black applicants were 3 times as likely to be denied a home mortgage loan than white applicants. And most frequently, this is on the basis of their credit history. Okay, so if you look at the next slide, we've mapped this. So here you can see Delmar pretty clearly. So here on the left, you can see where loans were approved for home purchases between 2019 and 2020. The majority of these are happening in the county, West County. Then when you look at home purchase denials, you can see there's some census tracts in North City where 75% of mortgage applications were denied. So really crazy. This is the St. Louis story at this point in time. So where we are, this is the stage we're in now that the report card is out, is we've been getting the word out and we've been delivering those data recommendations. So I think next we're showing you kind of some example slides. Or first we're showing you, here are some of the headlines that have been produced based on the report card. We've been getting pretty good coverage by a variety of outlets. And even some of our updates, our blogs, our guest writers have been getting significant coverage on their issues of choice. So conversion fees, for example. Did you want to talk about this one, Jenny?
Yes, I am back. So quick note on one way in which we've been working to make sure that the report card has some legs and is continuing to grow, and that we're leaning into next steps and strategies about how to take this to the next level. CBN received another grant from Flourish St. Louis. The first grant was from Deaconess. This one was from Flourish St. Louis. That provided support for BlackRock Consulting to conduct report card engagement sessions in targeted geographies that are experiencing the greatest levels of infant mortality, which are nearly all predominantly Black neighborhoods. So their team has been working on that over the past 3 or 4 months. They're wrapping up their work now, and more information about that will be forthcoming. But some major themes from their findings include residents want to be able to make informed decisions about their neighborhoods. They want data about their specific communities. So Christina mentioned earlier that a lot of the maps, or all of the maps, drill down to the census tract level. So that's great. There's definitely a big interest in that. There is a lot of interest in increasing incentives to build affordable housing for people at 30% AMI and below. So that's a big priority. There were some comments about how the housing justice system, or the housing justice ecosystem, could do a better job of coordinating more intentionally. So those are some conversations we'll be having at the coalition level. And I think one of the biggest takeaways is that there was an overwhelming recommendation that the next phase of this initiative be solutions focused. So as Christina has been talking about, we've sort of laid a foundation with all of this data. now we need to sort of pick all of this up and say, okay, what are we going to do about it and how are we going to do that? The feedback and the stories that BlackRock has collected will be both integrated into the report card website itself, and then obviously used to inform the coalition's advocacy and the advocacy that we hope to partner on with other organizations and institutions in the region. So more on that will come, but that's a quick update about where things are now with the report card community engagement.
Okay, so I think I was just going to show just an example of the recommendations we gave for St. Louis County. We met with St. Louis County housing officials. And so an example, like in order to better measure preservation of existing affordable housing stock, we had these following recommendations. We asked them to replicate city data that was available at the city level from the city of St. Louis that wasn't available at the county. We've asked for the county to take a greater role in aggregating data up from municipalities, such as tracking the number of demolitions or the housing code violations and that kind of thing that would help us better understand whether we're preserving existing affordable housing in the county. So next, I think the next slide also shows the other side of it. You know, what is it? What recommendations are we making for them to better measure building new? Again, we're asking them to track data that they don't currently track, including asking rents for new construction and asking prices for for sale new construction. That would really help us place what we're doing in context with whether it's helping us make the region more affordable or not. And that we've asked them to publish the number of housing units built using various programs. And lastly, the number of landlords that are actively accepting housing choice vouchers. So, alrighty then. So we had some recommendations for you all as well. And, you know, we did this for St. Louis City and County. But this is a process you can undertake for your own organization or for your own region. So evaluating your own organization's capability for measuring and making progress towards affordable housing goals, and using the report card as a guide. So many, you know, if your municipality is not tracking demolitions or new construction or any of these other aspects, evictions, foreclosures, these are things that we recommend you start doing. And we recommend that you make recommendations to your clients or your municipalities to track housing data with an equity lens in mind. So whenever possible, disaggregating data by race, income, and geography, especially when you're talking about resources like home repair loans or grants, or other things like that. So being able to track, you know, who is applying and who's receiving access to affordable housing resources. And then we're also recommending that everyone track data about the private housing market because they play a huge role in our region when you're talking about affordable housing, and that we need to better measure its quality, its accessibility, and its affordability. So, lastly, please use this report card and your own knowledge to challenge any assumptions that you come across about affordable housing in our region, like who it's for.
Yes, we know it can be, unfortunately, a controversial issue sometimes, and we hope that this report card is one step toward making it not that way. All right, so we've got some questions for discussion, and I think we have some items in the Q&A box. So yeah, Jess, you're back on camera, so let us know where you'd like us to go next.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for presenting this in such great detail. And I would now like to open it up to Q&A. So meeting participants, you can either use the raise hand function or you can type a question in the Q&A and I will read it, or throw it in the chat if you want. So I'm going to start with the chat. Megan had a comment. She said, why, oh, why was this analysis limited to the Missouri side of the river? This is a phenomenal analysis, but I feel like we're missing half the picture. And Christina said she would love to do one for Illinois, but can you tell us a little more about just, you know, why the county city geography was selected for this?
All right, well, I think this is a Jenny question too. But it was interesting, you know, as we were going through this project, yes, like housing is a regional issue. And what we mean by region, of course, it varies who you talk to. And I definitely think there's a ton of people who work in the city or county that live in Illinois and vice versa. So to really have a full picture of our regional housing supply demand, yes, it should be expanded. But Jenny, if you wanted to talk through, I think, the choice for doing the city and county combined and not expanding it, I think that was a deliberate choice.
It likely was, and this is a moment where I'm going to have to offer to circle back with my former colleague and come back to confirm. I agree with everything that's being said. We talk about this a lot at CBN. The disconnect between the Missouri and Illinois sides of the river is huge and makes it really tough to get work done. It's something that we try to combat in many ways in the work that we're doing at CBN. I know that there is a reason for why St. Louis City and County were chosen. I don't know it off the top of my head. And part of the side story on that is that this project was being led by a former colleague who moved out of the country at the end of last year. So some of this stuff I've been sort of picking up after the fact. So I will check in with him. He should know. If not, folks in the coalition will. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question for you right now. I totally agree with you that it is something we need to do better as a region. And certainly in some cases, could be seen as an oversight. What were you going to say, Christina?
Well, I think it's, it's very much an outcome of who the client is. And so here the client is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition, which has been focused on the city and county. So and
that is likely the answer.
Yeah,
but I'll check and see if there's more detail.
Yeah, so I do think, but it was interesting going through this process, how many times I was asked to oh, can you just share that for the city? City officials would ask for that, oh, can you show it just for what's the unmet demand for affordable housing in this ward? It's that's not how it works. So, it's interesting. This is, we had the city and county going through housing studies separately at the same time. And this was a deliberate effort to really, let's talk about them combined. And could we do even better by adding even more counties to the analysis? Yes, 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 yes.
Right. Thanks for that answer. And Illinois side, you have a mission now. So, talking your groups, find the funds, and let's expand the study. All right, we have two questions in the Q&A. The first was answered. It was Bob. He just asked for clarification on St. Louis region, and Christina clarified that the report cards focused on St. Louis City and County, but the federal standards for affordability are set using the MSA. And then Mara asked a question. She asked, legally, I would ask if cities are allowed to track housing by income and race, especially for communities that have smaller amounts of affordable housing. It would seem that it could have privacy concerns. Are there other ways to track this data?
Great question. So HUD already collects data from your housing authorities about the racial demographics of who's using subsidized housing. So they're already reporting that out. And they do have a standard where if it's a small enough number, it won't be, sorry, I have someone at the door and the dog's telling me so. And I've lost my train of thought, but if it's a small enough number, they redact it. So that's my quick answer for that. And let me get that request at the door.
All right, do we have other questions? Again, you can raise your hand and I'll let you ask your question yourself. We can use the Q&A or you can throw it in the chat. Or if you don't have a question, responses are fine as well. We'd love to hear, what you learned or if there was any information that you found surprising in this or, how the information aligns with your experience, your professional experience in either your municipality or consulting firm. Oh, somebody, okay, I see hands up. All right, Jonathan, I tried to call on you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, it's great information, a lot to chew on. But for communities, and I think some of this has been discussed a little bit about the need to do the county and citywide at the same time. And I know you had recommendations up there for our group of where to go. But I guess I'm just curious as to the opinion for communities, smaller communities in the county that are interested in making progress or trying to do what they can, do their part to help progress in this area of affordable housing. Is it still recommended for us to do studies, in our own areas similar to this, but keeping in mind the region, or what would you recommend to the best approach for that?
Yeah, so like last year, I gave a presentation to the Clayton Equity Commission with that in mind. You had that thinking in mind as well. And what I do think it's important to understand your municipality's role in the housing, market, the regional housing market. So understanding like what share of housing of different types do you have compared to the region to help you set some standards. So for Clayton, for example, they, as I mentioned, they have no housing choice vouchers. They have very limited subsidized housing in Clayton, and but they're attracting a lot of development. So there are going to be different affordable housing strategies that work better in places like Clayton because they're attracting development. So you can make asks of developers to either put into a affordable housing fund or to set aside subsidized units or protected units that you wouldn't be able to do in places that aren't attracting development. And then, they're talking about, well, how much affordable housing should we be creating? Like, what are we responsible for? And, a helpful guide is comparing yourself to the region. So Clayton has 1% of this region's of overall housing supply. So like, is 1% like 1% of the region's affordable housing? Would that make sense? I'm like, well, you can, that would make sense. That'd be great. But then also looking at, hey, in terms of new construction, Clayton's attracting 10% of the region's new construction. So, it would be an incredible, like if you're setting goals for your region, it's helpful to put yourself in context with the region, one. But then adopting strategies that are attractive to developers who build affordable housing. It depends on what your region or your municipality can support. Like really understanding your municipality and characterizing it in terms of the region, and that'll help you identify what strategies make the most sense. So I do think it's important to know your own, municipality very well, and like, what are you actually doing, and what's your supply look like, and who's living there, and that helps you, put yourself in that conversation. So that would be my like suggested approach. I'm happy to, have Jenny or anyone else submit a advice.
I don't necessarily have advice to chime in, but I will say that definitely we are open to sort of having ongoing conversations about this. So Jonathan, if you would be interested in like sitting down offline and having a conversation about specific things that are happening in your community, definitely open to that. And some other folks from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition, we could probably pull into that conversation too. As I mentioned before, sort of the setting recommendations and strategies part is sort of phase 2 of this. So we definitely want to be in community with everyone in the region around making those strategies and recommendations happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I saw Mara had her hand up, so Mara, you should have the floor now.
Thanks so much. Thanks for this presentation. It's been very, very helpful. Quick question. So last night at our city council meeting, I proposed that we start looking at accessory dwelling units within our community. And sorry, I'm with Webster Groves. Most of the examples that I've been finding so far are East Coast, West Coast. Have you been dealing with any communities who are looking at the idea of trying to get more affordable units through means of accessory dwelling units, whether they're attached to a house or detached from a house?
Yeah, that's a great question. We didn't begin monitoring. So there's a few, some of the metrics that we've decided in this first report card to track were, for example, how many municipalities have adopted inclusionary zoning, or different policies that attract, that support affordable housing. And accessory dwelling units is not one of them, but it should be. So like how many areas of our region have any kind of policy around accessory dwelling units? That would be very helpful. And I don't know the answer. Jenny, I don't know if you have any answers to that based off of the network.
I don't off the top of my head, but I'm writing it down now as something to follow up on. So Mara, thank you for doing that. That sounds, I'm excited that you are advocating for that in Webster.
If you want to see it, so our city council meetings are now on YouTube. And I think the work session's on there too. Yeah, it should be on the YouTube. You'll see our code section as to how we allow them, but yet they're pretty much prohibited. So we're talking about how to change. You can have an accessory dwelling unit right now, but it can only be a family member who lives with you, and you can't rent it out, and you can't have separate electric. So we are looking at that, and it's in all of our code sections. And if you look at Seattle has an amazing website. It's AD Universe. So ADU and then finish the word universe. And they actually have it on a GIS level where you can click on your property and see how big of an accessory dwelling unit you can have. And they also have already approved architectural examples that you can contact a designer for. And it allows in Seattle 2 accessory dwelling units, one within the dwelling, like in a basement or attached, and one in the yard based on lot size and setbacks and floor area ratio. It's pretty fascinating.
Wow, that sounds great. I will definitely check that out.
Thanks for the presentation.
No, thank you so much. I'm actually, my wheels are kind of turning now of, so why Seattle? And maybe you can answer this, Mara. Is that a recent development, or has it been that way for a while, that they've been very open and supportive of these types of dwellings?
So in the last few years, I know when I went to both our national conference in New York and our national conference in San Francisco, I attended sessions on accessory dwelling units, but it seems like, so the state of Vermont has approved them, California, Washington, I think, and then Montgomery County, Maryland, and Seattle. There's a small number, and I put together a packet for my council members with some of the examples. And then the AARP actually has a sample ADU ordinance that you can use. And I know our One STL website has some links for accessory dwelling units too. But I think for our community, that might be our only way to address it.
It's
in
interesting.
some ways.
Yeah, like accessory dwelling units are best for areas where there's high demand for housing and limited development opportunities. And so, there's only a few parts of our region that really qualify like that, and Webster Groves is one of them. So I think, accessory dwelling units are a policy adopted by incredibly popular cities, and where there's a undersupply of units, period. So it might be hard to find a Midwest version of that. Like Webster Groves is the
It's a great example.
It's going to be tough.
This is also a great example of how just this conversation is a great example of how we have always been hoping that the report card would be used. So you hear the findings, you see the need, and you're coming to the table with your expertise about how you could see your community coming forth with solutions to help sort of collectively address the issue. So thank you for that example, Mara.
Thanks.
All right. Do we have any other questions? While we're kind of building on the conversation just now with Mara, I think it's a great example for, us as planners, especially those of us who, have worked or still work at municipalities, to think about what would work in your municipality. When we sit through presentations like this and we see that, the units that are really needed are in that 30% or below AMI bracket. And for a lot of places, the reality just are that that's not the kind of housing they want to build. But are they open to workforce housing where you're targeting more towards that, 80 to 100% AMI? And, then from there, is there a way to expand, who essentially communities are willing to house? Because that's kind of, what it can boil down to is, who do we want to live in our community, and are we, who are we inviting to come here? So I think, thinking about what we can do, like how to, crack the door, and then, it's all very helpful and it's all very important, even if, your community isn't going, to say, oh, wow, my planner went to this presentation and we're submitting a LIHTC application next year, we're ready to go. That may not be you, but I think Mara gave a great example of thinking about how you can use your influence to do, what you think you might get traction on, based on, your kind of unique position of working in the community and understanding the community dynamics, the political dynamics, and the, overall role in the region. Does anyone else have, I see maybe someone has their hand up. No, I think it's still Jonathan. Were there any other questions for presenters today? Or thoughts? I saw that there was a slide up on just kind of topics for discussion. If anyone, wants to share their experience or where they think they might be able to advocate within their community.
Yeah, and I think, just to note, this report card is its like initial version, right? And if we're using the New Orleans report card as a model, they committed to replicating it every year for 10 years and use it really as a planning document and a living document. So you guys are our audience for this, and we really want the report card to be useful for you. So any feedback you want to give at any point about like, hey, actually, this is what I'm looking for to support my ADU policy that I'm recommending. That's all really useful feedback, and we can make the report card better together.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, even I think just taking the time to gather and share experiences, maybe in your municipality, you will be able to say, hey, well, I hear Webster Groves is considering ADU, so why not us? Even if it's just at the consideration phase, I think, that knowledge sharing is, something we're really good at as a section, and something that's really important, especially when we're dealing with the trickier stuff in planning. So again, I just want to thank our presenters, first of all, Jenny and Christina. I love, hearing and learning about this stuff. So thank you both so much. And then also, thanks to everyone for participating, and especially those who, were willing to jump in and ask questions and tell us what they're experiencing currently. So I think with that, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and end our webinar today. And again, we'll be back on April 20th talking about energy efficient home construction. So yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jess. I had just a couple more like final wrap up notes.
Oh yeah, sure.
And we
sorry.
should have done this. No, I am
Yeah.
sorry. We should have done this before the discussion. I think I was thinking this would be kind of like a final capstone thing. So
Okay,
if
no,
anyone's
great.
interested in staying in touch, next steps, that kind of thing, three things, and I'm trying to find the correct window. So one, you're very welcome to join the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition mailing list. Please feel free to do that here on the website, just to kind of stay up to date and in touch about the coalition's activities and advocacy efforts. We also have a number of report card presentations posted to the website. So if you are, and obviously this recording will be available as well. And actually, maybe we can talk about this offline, Jess, but if you're open to us posting that to the website, maybe that's something we could do, but we can talk about that offline. Don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. But there are lots of other presentations posted to the website. So if you want to share, please feel free to do that. And oh, I'm sorry. My chat, Christy just pointed out my chat is not going to everyone. And I think that's been the entire time. So sorry for those of you who have not seen any of my comments this entire presentation, but there are the two links. The first one is to sign up for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coalition mailing list. The second is where you can find past recordings of report card presentations. And then if you're really interested in joining the coalition and getting involved there, please feel free to reach out directly to me and I'll make sure that you can get plugged in. So thank you, Christina, because that just went to the host too. I think everything else was just commentary, but so sorry that you all missed that, but thank you so much again for having us here today. It's been really good to have this conversation with you. And thank you for the work and advocacy that you're doing for our region. And thanks again to APA for inviting us, Christy and Jess.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, I'm really excited to keep interacting around this topic with our membership and, with you and Christina, Jenny. So thanks again. And we'll go ahead and end the webinar now. Have a good afternoon, everyone.